tell you a story. Right? I do not feel that I have all the knowledge to tell you how everything here was built. Who built it? Because it would have taken me lots of time. But what I can tell you is the story of this place before we arrived here. Long time ago. So we're gonna start the presentation. So, a long time ago. I wonder if I can switch.
Oh, I'm late on my cue.
Somebody's coming.
About 13,000 years ago. Hey. Oh, hi. How are you? So 13,000 years ago, at the place that we are seated right here, and some of you at home who are living in the Laurentian, there were about a kilometer of ice above your head. So most of the land was covered with a kilometer of ice. That's only 13,000 years ago. Okay? And in Earth history, 13,000 years is really a small little piece of not even a drop of sand. The Earth history is about 5 billion years. But 13,000 years ago, something happened on Earth. It was a réchauffement, or heating of the planet. And all that ice melted. And that ice changed into Champlain Sea. So the withdrawal of all that ice, it was strong because a kilometer of ice, could carry with it boulders. Have you seen those big boulders in the woods? Have you ever wondered how did they arrive there? Why did they are right there? They were left there by the ice, by the melting of the ice, and by the retrieving of that ice. So boulders that are as big as this place here. It's quite incredible. The power of that ice kind of shaped the territory, shaped the land, shaped the landscape, shaped the mountains. Struck the top of the mountains. And that rock that's underneath us is part of the oldest rock on planet Earth. It's part of a big continent that used to be called the Laurentia. Laurentia was a supercontinent. So big, so huge, with mountains that were as high as Mount Everest, even higher than Mount Everest. 10 kilometers high. Mount Everest is about 8 kilometers and 900 meters high. So it was the highest mountain. And all these top mountains on the planet, they were shaped by the melting, the heating of the planet, the movement of the tectonic plates, everything that moved and shaped during that long time that became, and today they are what we know the Laurentian. The rocks are the oldest rocks on planet Earth, and they are the hardest one. As hard as a Scott's head. That rock is part of our history, but that rock 13,000 years ago was underneath tons of water that was called the Champlain Sea. You heard of that, the Champlain Sea. So we switch again. So that was the length of the Champlain Sea. All the valley, the St. Lawrence Valley was covered with water. all of it. And you can see that we are about here. And right up there is Mille-Isles. We can switch to the other one. And you'll see that's the beaches of the Champlain Sea. Vermelde, Mille-Isles was underwater. So we can imagine if Harrington was there, Gore was there, we are in Mille-Isles, we're underneath that water. That's quite incredible when you think about it, eh? And in these waters, there were swimming fishes, big fishes, mammals, like
Oh, no.
those swimming in the Lamsalis Lake. The Lamsalis Lake is an Algonquin word that means whales. So we were living right in the middle of the lake of the whales. What kind of whales did we found in that lakes? With fish? All kind. The other one. Sorry.
Further?
Again. Yeah, humpback whales. Ancient humpback whales. Okay. How do we know that? How can you imagine that we know that? It's because at one time, there was a farmer in Pembroke, Ontario, and he was digging his ground, and he encountered something really big and solid. And then he digged around, and went like this, my God, it was whale's bones buried underneath his land. That was quite incredible. We can switch, and you can see, that's what he found. And back in those days, we were in 1874. So since 1874, we know, historians, archaeologists know that there were whales swimming in these waters here. So I always figured and asked myself, if there were whales swimming in these waters, would there be sharks? We never know, eh?
Yeah.
Heard that story of that fisherman on the North River who said that one time he fished a shark near Illusha down in St. Andrews. You ever heard about that story? He said that he had 2 feet between his eyes.
Oh, wow.
That's a real story. But you know, sharks wouldn't have swim in these waters because it was really too cold of water. But what we found, we can go back one or two. Again, okay. This is in the valley, Ottawa Valley, places that we found bones of whales. Many archaeological surveys were made there. And if we go back one slide again, we can see that sorry, here. This is where we have found coquillage fossils buried in the ground underneath the sand. We know that in Mont-Laurier and all in these places there are banks of sand that could go up to 15 to 20 feet deep in the ground, and that bank of sands was really the beaches of the Champlain Sea and Lamsalis Lake. So you can imagine that if on your ground, on your land, you have banks of sand, it could have been those beaches of the Champlain Sea that will bring you back to 13,000 years ago, which is quite incredible when you think about that. In history, time is pretty relative, right? It's something that's training or something that could be looking really in a small perspective. But when you look at it in a long perspective, your mind and your ways of looking at history changes, okay? We go on. 2, 3, 4. Okay. I wanted to show you that slide of population and disease, because before the Scots, the Brits, the French, the Spaniard, the Portuguese, before the Hollander came here, there were people living here, and people living here for thousands of years, more than we ever thought. I've showed you the time of the Champlain Sea. 13,000 years ago is about the time that we figure that today, that there were um, what's the term now? It's kind of a, I'm almost mixed with it.
First Nation.
First Nation, we could say First Nation, First People, or Indigenous people. They were living here since 13,000 years ago. Here in Argenteuil, which means that in Mille-Isles, we know that they were here 6,000 years ago. And we imagine, historians and journalists and archaeologists, that before the arriving of Christopher Columbus, America was there were people and tribes everywhere. And we imagine at that time that the population of the Americas from the north to south would have been 125 million people. The city of Mexico was bigger than the city of Paris, of London, of Rome. You can imagine. The story that was told to us, like when we were at school, they said that those people were savage and there were not too many. They were just small tribes living in the country. They were not evolué. They had no technology, no nothing. But history tells us that they knew much more than the European ever did about this place here, because they lived here, they survived here for more than 13,000 years, which is quite incredible when you look at it. You can imagine that the Saint Laurent Valley was filled with tribes and people living. Probably little cities of 3,000 people to 5,000 people. You can imagine that St. Louis, the city of St. Louis, there were more than 100,000 people living there before the arriving of Christopher Columbus. The city of Mexico, there were more than 1 million people living there, and it was the second city. Tenochtitlan, and you have Teotihuacan. Teotihuacan, that was the old Aztec city, and it was deserted for about 3,000 years by the time that Cortés arrived in Mexico City, which was called at that time Tenochtitlan. And in Tenochtitlan, they had the evacuation of the old water. You know, all the water was going into a sewer, a certain sewer. In St. Louis, they built depth of land that was over the Fleuve Missouri, the Missouri River, because they knew that the Mississippi River was always, flooding in the springtime or in the summertime. So they protected their crops from that flooding. We can imagine that here in Argenteuil, all these indigenous people knew about the North River. You know the North River, huh? It's down south, it's passing through the chute. That's the wildest river that we can ever imagine here. Because sometimes it's like a little creek. It's a little creek going down the streams and the chute and everything. But in springtime, it grows so high, about 15 to 20 feet. And it could flood in springtime, in summertime, in the fall time, even in the winter time. Because of the rain, because of the melting of the snow. So it's a wild river. But the Algonquin who lived in the chute, they knew about it. This is why they never built their houses or village nearby the river. What did the Americans that came to Lachute did? Where did they build their houses? First, really close to the river. So they encountered the savageness of that river during their stay. I wanted to show you this one because this is the story of the first contact. That's the picture of the story of the first contact. When the European arrived here, they carried illness with them. That illness, the people here never had any protection against those illness. And those illness were variole or rougeole, the flying the pots, what do you call that?
Chicken
Small, yeah, small, yeah, the one that the kids have, eh?
Yeah.
Same thing. That's it. So, as inoffensive as it seemed, those illness killed 90% of the population of America during 100 years of time. 90%. That means that we are close to 25 here with the people on the internet. How many are they?
There are 12.
12. So we're up to 36. 90% of 36. That means probably only 3% here would have survived. That's the story of the first contact. And we can imagine that we could just say, change the slide. This is the same drop that we have in the St. Lawrence Valley between the arrival of Jacques Cartier and the passing of Samuel de Champlain on our lands to the Battle of Dollard des Ormeaux, Battle of the Long Sault in 1660. So the valley, the St. Lawrence Valley, was occupied by these indigenous people. But by the time Cartier went back to France and Champlain arrived, almost 90% of the population was gone. That's incredible. And we're not talking about wars now.
Yeah.
Mostly talking about the illness. Yeah. It's incredible, right? But that story, nobody told that while we were younger, right?
Of course not.
No. You know why?
Yeah, they didn't want to do all that.
What? Probably they forgot. Probably what happened is that they forgot. They forgot what it was, or they never asked the good question. How come there was nobody here? They just assumed that there was nobody here, because the story that we have is not that one here. It's that one here. That's the story that was told to us, eh? So, historians, archaeologists, all the people who are looking in the past, they are kind of going into a quest for knowledge, a quest for question. We are inquirers. That's about it. We are detectives of the past. And we are asking the question that is in the ways of our time. It's always like that. And we are interpreting those questions. And this is what I'm doing. See, I have the chance that there are so many scholars who are doing research on that topic that I can communicate their results. This is not the inquiry that I did. It's only results that we have. And by telling you that, it will change your perspective on, okay, there were so many people before us here, right? So next time you walk in the wood, you can imagine that, yes, people walked in that wood before you. Long time ago, 6,000 years ago, from 6,000 years ago till today, okay? About those people living here, we know that there were Montagnais, we know that there were people in Hochelaga, we know that there were Algonquin, Hurons, Mohawk, Iroquois, everybody there. When they talk to you about Oka, they are displaced people. The same thing that's happening everywhere else on our planet today. You know, the people from Rwanda, RDC are changing places. So the people from Oka, they used to live at Sault-des-Récollets in Montreal, and they were displaced to Oka because we needed the land for the seigneur in the island of Montreal. So it's not their native land. They are from here, that's for sure. But if they have to claim some land, they should claim the island of Montreal.
Where can we vote?
Where can we vote? We can change slide, and we'll see more in Argenteuil, okay? This is a theory that I came up with while doing my studies, and always said that that valley was some time of a vacuum after the passage of, well, the transmission of all these illness it was a saying in the tribes that never go down the valley because you will die. So we have to protect the valley. The valley will be someplace, a place forbidden, okay? So all the tribes used to live surrounding the valley from after the passage of Cathy up to the time of Champlain. After that, they kind of forget too about the illness and they start to go back in the valley because the illness was not present anymore. But one of the passage was Carillon. And you can see here that we are close to Mille-Isles, right? So probably Mille-Isles was part of that frontier. And it's the same frontier that was the lake, the famous Champlain Sea. So it's quite incredible. And but those who rule the door, the entry door of the valley would possess lots of power. So Carillon was a place of conflict, and probably all the surrounding of that frontier here were places of conflict. So probably we had fight here between the Algonquins and the Iroquois. And we can see the tribes that we have there. Really weird name. Chloe, can you switch?
Yeah.
Thanks. So you see, we have Algonquin on the north part. West Carini, Kishisipilini, Kotakutuemini, and we have the hierarchies on the southern part of the Ottawa River, the Onan Charonan, the Matu West Carini, see? So all these tribes were present at the time of Cathy and Champlain. They were here, living here, walking through those paths. From the south up to the north, going south in the summertime and going up north in the winter time. They were nomads. They were not people settlers. They were not settlers. But the Onan-Charonan, they were settlers. We have found traces of their passage in the lands of St. Andrews. Switch. Here in Grenville, here in Carillon, here in St. Andrews Golf Course, and up to here. Why do we not have any traces of those people up to here, to Mille-Isles? It's because we had no interest of digging in the ground. Maybe some of you or your ancestors have found arrows from on a piece of land or near by a nearby lake. It's probably possible because that we know that they were occupying, traveling on these lands. So that's one thing. I'm going to show you what we found, and those artifacts are at the museum in Carillon. Okay, this is what it's easy for me to talk about that. This chisel it's dated about 5,000 years ago, and that was an archaeologist in that was a farmer on the Monte Rogers in St. Andrews. He was, like digging the ground, and he found a couple of pieces of arrows and that thing there. So he called the archaeologist. The archaeologist came by in 1957, and they found lots of old artifacts like this one. The other one would be a primitive axe. It looks like a rock, but it's shaped like an axe, and that was used to mold the flour, the flour, the flour, the corn flour, grind, and it was used to get the old bread that was called the bannick from out of the fire, okay, and that was used to farming, because they were farmers, and they grew corn, they grew squash, and they grew beans, yeah, and that was named the Three Sisters, okay, and with that, and fishing, and hunting, and what kind of fish they were fishing in the North River in Lachute? Salmon.
Oh, really?
Salmon. And that's not a story. Yeah, it's true. They were fishing salmon. before they built dams on the river, the salmon used to go up most of the rapids, most of the chutes, and up to the big chute, and even over the big chute. And they were climbing up the North River, but after the building of the dams, no fishes came up there. So they were replaced by pikes and trout and dory. Dory, what's dory in English? Walleye. Walleye, yeah. Walleye.
Thank you.
Good thing you come over here.
We can switch. That's a tanwa. They used to work with the skin, the animal skin, okay? And you know, those the first people, they were wearing the fur inside instead of outside, right? That's what the French never understood, because they wanted to show the richness of the but the fur inside keeps you warm, yeah. And with the skin outside, but it's against the rain, it's like yeah, it protects you from the rain, yeah. And what the French thought of that fur that the First Nation used to wear is that they made that the process of felt, and that felt was used to make hats in France. Yeah, and that was the best felt to make the hats. Yeah. You know, mixing with that special solution of mercury and yeah. This is why we have the Mad Hatter. This was good with the mercury.
Yeah.
So another one there, and after that we have pipes fragment. Those were found nearby Calumet. You know that little town Calumet by the Ottawa River, past Grenville on the way to Ottawa? That place is named because of the Calumet, that they used to smoke. So it was a place where the First Nation, the first people stopped, and it was a place of kind of worship and of peace. Because it was before the Long Sault and just by the Red River, which with its big chutes and rapids and everything. So that place was a place of where we could be calm and smoke the pipe. Then we could switch. And arrowheads, those are stone arrowheads. It's quite incredible the work that they had to do to shape them, right? And after that time so we can imagine that here, if you look underneath the ground, certain places by lakes, you could find that type of arrowhead. It could be bones too. Later on, they were using bones. Yeah. We can switch. This is really interesting. Those were digged from the ground, the golf course in St. Andrews, just by the North River and the Ottawa River, right there. And what we came up, we came to the conclusion that because of that, these little things here, stripe there, it's Iroquois pottery. So, and we determined at that time that there was a village there, because we found lots of little pottery like this and lots of arrowheads and everything. And back in those days, from about 1,000 I would say 1,000 years ago, the village was moving in St. Andrews. Those people, they were practicing the jachère. I would say jachère. The rotation, the rotation of the land. You know, while you were cropping, you do not crop the same thing every time at the same place. So you're changing places. And this is what they were doing. Every 5 to 10 years, they were moving the village to crop different piece of different fields. And by moving the village, they were moving to the dead people. Some of them stayed there, maybe they were burying their dead people, but they carried bones with them along the way by moving the village. And when they built the cemetery in St. Andrews, the old St. Andrews Protestant cemetery that's in the curve going to Carillon from St. Andrews, the Americans living in St. Andrews and the Brits living in St. Andrews built their cemetery over the old Iroquois cemetery. Yeah, yeah. So we have, there was one guy who talked with a journalist in the Watchman back in those days, Norman Corburn. He was interviewing Cunningham, William Cunningham, Bill Cunningham, who became a deputy of Argenteuil, and he said he was the ground digger, and he said at one time by digging for a ground for a grave, he encountered Iroquois artifacts and Iroquois bones they were buried there. So yeah, it's quite incredible. And I've been looking for years and years in the St. Andrews Cemetery to find the place where he was digging, but there's almost no way that we can know. Yeah.
Wouldn't the bones, for so many years come to surface?
Some of them could. It's just like rocks.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like rocks. You know that here people were cropping lots of things and lots of rocks. Eh?
Yeah.
And what do you do with those rocks today? Eh? You build.
Yeah.
They make more baby rocks.
So, do you have questions about that time? I know that we're going back in time. It seems like a lecture. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm curious, in St. Andrews, do they acknowledge that underneath is possibly the cemetery or where the natives did bury their dead, or is that something maybe for the future?
This is it's a narrative that I'm building, and I remember at one time the village they wanted to give the permission to a promoter to develop and build a big hotel on the old golf course in St. Andrews, because now the golf course is closed and abandoned, and they wanted to build something for the big VRs and everything. And one lady who was there came up to me at the museum and she asked me, do you know if there were really a village there? And I said, yes, I do know it, and I can prove it. So I wrote a little paper, and she dropped the little paper at the municipality, and because of that, that thing never happened. So, yeah, we kind of protected the land, but there is no national recognition of their passage and their occupying the land. I figured that the municipalities are not really ready for that. You know, we're talking about the Truth and Reconciliation.
They're too backwards.
Yeah, yeah, but the step is really too steep to make only one step. We have to go little by little. And one of my main goal as an historian, as a communicator, is to tell you that story. So from that, I'm doing my part. And if I ever need to demonstrate scientifically that there were First Nation or First people living in a certain part of land, I'm able to do it. You know, so yeah.
I have a question. You mentioned that there's a period of maybe 100 years where you lose 90% of the, how do we know that? Did we do like DNA tests and we could pull the dates and all of that?
Most of the research that those guys did was through archaeological surveys and through the transmission of the old history, their old narratives. They have listened to the first people. That's what they did. They went to the first people and they listened to them. What's the story of your tribe? Where do you come from? What's in, you know, that narrative has been transmitted from generation to generation. You know, they're still sitting with their grandpas and listening to their story. What we are mostly not doing. We're kind of, because we're all transmitter or facade of that memory of our family history. If you are interested in in that family history, you will transmit that knowledge to your sons or to a cousin or to somebody, right? So they've been doing that for generations. So that's what they did. And by surveying the land, looking at the land from the top, they imagined, wow. And can you imagine that Teotihuacan in nearby Mexico is bigger than the pyramid in Egypt? So it's not only 100 people who have built that through time. And we know now that those big pyramids in Mexico, the Aztec pyramids or the Mayan pyramids, they are built in 3 phases through hundreds of years of building. So today we have access to technology that helps us to understand how they were built, right? And that helps us a lot. So that helps us too to determine the quantity of people that were living on the land. Okay.
I think that the fact that you're telling us all this is making us more curious, more likely to go digging.
Yes.
We'll do that sometime.
And you know, if I can give you a reference, a book reference that you need to read, okay? And that you need to pass on to other generation. That book it's really easy to remember, yeah. It's 1491. 1491, 1 year before the arriving of Christopher Columbus. That book is written by an American called Charles Mann, M-A-N-N, 1491. And he wrote a second book, 1493, so a year after the arriving of Christopher Columbus. And you know now, most of the historians are questioning the part of Christopher Columbus in the colonization of the America, right? They are questioning his intention and everything. And this is part of it's the ways of the time. Yeah, it is the ways of the time. So it's all right. Yeah, yeah. So we're always revisiting in history. There are times where mostly we're revisiting, and other times we are discovering. So
And it's ongoing.
and it's ongoing. Yeah, yeah. It's a long process. It's a never-ending story. So not so long ago, there were places. This place here is by the Ottawa River. It's no more. It's underneath 60 feet of water. And that was a mill. That was a sawmill by the Ottawa River near Cushing. It was a beautiful place. So we can switch. Forgotten places, like this one, just by the canal. That was by the Chute-Blondeau Canal. Now it's underneath 60 feet of water. It was a little house. That little house was the guy who was the lock master used to live there. You know what a lock master is?
Yeah.
No. No. He was the guy closing the door of the lock. Yeah, he was the lock master. And he had to work with a big wheel like that, and he opened the door, and then the barge would come in full of things, and then he would raise the water, and they would go to the second lock, and the 11 locks were on the Ottawa River in the 19th century. That's quite incredible.
Yeah.
So forgotten places and forgotten people. That's the tombstone of one of the Royal Staff soldier who built the Grenville Canal. They worked on the Grenville Canal from 1819 to 1834. 15 years. There were 600 soldiers who came from Britain, from the Great Britain, who came from Ireland, who came from Scotland, who came from Vaudreuil. They were there, and they dig the ground, and that ground was same rock that we have here. And they have no dynamite, they have no backhoe, they had no nothing, just a shovel and pick. And they used black powder to explode the rock. So they were drilling the rocks, filling it with black powder, hiding in the woods and lighting that up and
Wow.
it took them 15 years. And they dig 1/10 of the rocks of the Great Pyramids of Cheops. 1/10 of the rocks. This is what they dig from the ground of Argenteuil. Those people are probably some of your ancestors because they were there by the Ottawa River, and then they had a grant, land grants in 1834, 35, 36, and they went up north. They went through the old Indian path, and they crossed the North River, and they walked up to here with that ticket of location. And then they arrived there and they looked, they said, okay, you have to walk from the big cedar about a mile northeast.
It was like that 50 years ago here.
Yeah. And then you would arrive at that big boulder. Your land would be on the left. And you look at the land, it's a mountain with a lake. And you look on the right, wow, it's a nice, well, it could be a field where I could crop. So instead of going on the left, build a house on the right and live there for 30 years. Had kids, sons, even grandsons. And at one time somebody came come to his door saying, what you doing on my land? And probably grandpa knew about it, never told his son that they were squatters on a piece of land, yeah. And they had to move because they have no proof that it was their land. It's a story though. And you know what? Probably one grandma walked from here, from Mille-Isles, and went down to Le Chute, to the mill, to flour, to do the flour, to grind the flour. And she walked with that big 100-pound bag on her shoulder. She was probably pregnant too. It took her a day to walk. Yeah, it's quite incredible, man. So I'll keep that in the memory of those people. A disappearing heritage. That's a beautiful place. That's Stonefield. Yeah, Stonefield by the Ottawa River. Stonefield is underneath 60 feet of water. Yeah, yeah. It was at the bottom of the head of the Long Sault. So you have Grenville here, Stonefield was there, and then you have Carillon was here. So you see, Carillon, 12 feet. That was the 12 feet that was the big chute of Carillon, about that high. And then you had Chute à Tonneau about my height, and then the head of the Long Sault, that was 45 feet of rapids from Grenville to Stonefield, about 7 kilometers of rapids. It was a beautiful place. Sometimes we try to preserve, right? We know houses that were built like this. Those stones were put together by Scots people. They were the builders. The Izicasse, the Scots, the Scottish were the builders. They were the farmers too. They were the good farmers. They knew how to do the rotation of the land. They knew how to use the Scottish plough. The Scottish plough had these shovel here that made the ground turn. Oxygen, bringing oxygen and azote into the ground. Before that, we used a stick, and we were planting the plants like that. The Americans, they were no good farmers. The Americans came here first in 1790s, in the 1790s. But they didn't come to Mille-Isles, they came to Le Chute and St. Andrews, but they were no farmers, they were soldiers. They fought for the British Army, and they fought for the American Revolution. So they were enemies in the United States, and they came here in Argentina, and they became buddies. Yeah, because it was hardship, it was really hardship for them to live here, okay? So, we can switch.
What's the roof made of?
It's thin, Yeah, and it didn't click like this on the side of the.
It's what, Jim?
Yeah.
Then lost in oblivion, because that house was supposed to be rebuilt in the Carillon Park. Part of an heritage, just like the in Ontario, they have the village, this.
Upper Canada.
Upper Canada Village, thanks, yeah, they wanted to do an Upper Canada Village in Carillon. So rebuild houses, rebuild a mill there. So they put all the rocks into a pile, and they had number on it, and they were supposed, but we kind of vanished. They were missing money to do the project. Probably those rocks ended up underneath the ground. Look at them. Wow. Or in the wild. That looks like a.
Looks like here.
Yeah, it looks like here, right? Yeah, but underneath all the leaves there.
Yeah.
That photo was taken on the Scotch Road, okay? Scotch Road, there used to be an Anglican community living there with a Scots community. And the Scots had a cemetery, the Scotch Road cemetery, with a little church that was on the side of the road. But the Anglican community had a church there. The church was moved around 1900 to Stonefield. But there was a burial ground behind the church, just as there was a burial ground on the Scotch Road Cemetery. People took care of the Scotch Road Cemetery, but the Anglican community kind of vanished in Ontario and Alberta, Winnipeg, and they never took care of the cemetery. So now there's probably 25 to 30 people buried there with no markers, no traces of who they are, who they were, where did they come from. But you know, that story was told to me, and I took care of writing it into a book that we made with the MRC d'Argenteuil. And that book here is the inventory of the cemetery of the MRC d'Argenteuil. You can hook it online. There's a PDF of that.
What year would that have been on Scott's Road?
That cemetery was probably built around the 1860s, and it was occupied up until the 1890s. Yeah. And I wanted to show you that because we think that there is all nature here, but probably at one time there was a family living there, and there was a house there, and they cropped the land there. And that land, you know, when they went away, when they sold, or when they decided because it was too hard for them to crop, it was too hard for them to live up here, they decided to move to Ontario, in the southern part of Ontario, or the eastern part of Ontario. They left the land there, and then the forests start to grow again. And that forest is a young forest. It's not an old forest. It's a young forest, but that land was cropped before. Generation before us. It's the story of Shrewsbury. You know Shrewsbury? Yeah, the last people who sold their land there was probably 1940s. And then they left a cemetery and a church.
Yeah, the church stuff.
But everywhere around you go by the Shrewsbury Road, you could see the places where the foundation of the houses. You can feel it in the land. It's still there. But all of Shrewsbury was, the trees were cut down and they were farming there. So probably here in Mille-Isles too, sure, that was, yeah, it was, yeah. So sometimes wilderness is not wilderness.
Not very long ago,
And not very long ago,
in the
yeah,
1950s,
Yeah.
40s and 50s, it was nearly all farmland here.
yeah.
Well, you would know, Keith.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, because you were there, yeah, you were there, and your parents were there. Around what time your parents arrived here in Mille-Isles?
1850.
1850. That's a long time ago. Yeah. And were they squatters at first, or they had their?
No, they came into Sensiver first, just on the line between, the Mill and Sensiver.
Mhm.
That's where they first came to. And, but they cleared the land.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And they probably had at that time 200 acres, is that right?
Yeah, a lot of.
That was a lot. Yeah.
Well, there were 100-acre farms, but they got two.
Yeah, they had two lots, so they had 200 acres. Yeah, but because in Mille-Isles, it was not big enough to have 200 acres lot, but in Gore, they had 200 acres lot. A half lot would have been 100 acres, but they had to cut the trees.
Yeah.
To farm the land.
Yeah.
It's a lot of hardship, eh?
And move the rocks.
And move the rocks.
Yeah. That's true.
That's true.
So when they first came here, their main income was, potash.
Yeah.
They cut the trees down and burnt them, and then they took the potash to, I believe it was St. Rome.
Mhm. So they walked through Saint Jerome by Côte Saint-Angélique, eh? Yeah.
So then they come up through St. Andrews East into Shrewsbury, into Mille, and then up to Moore Heights.
Yeah, they probably, and they were walking by the West Gorge. So, nearby, Lake Claire, Clear Lake, yeah, Clear Lake, and then the West Gorge, and then, up to here, yeah. So sometimes it's forgotten, just like the Ayers plant. You know about Ayers?
Yeah.
Beautiful blankets. Do you have any Ayers blanket? Yeah, I still have one, and it's still in great shape. I have 3 or 4 at home, and yeah. I'm lucky because I did a documentary on the Ayers history, and at that time I went to a place in Lachute, and I found 4 blankets there from different age and time. It's incredible. So those blankets were the best blankets that we can ever buy. The town of Lachute exists because of Ayers. Without Ayers and Wilson, there would have been no town of Lachute. And Ayers and Wilson came to Lachute because of the train. If the train didn't pass by Lachute, probably they wouldn't have any. So people from all around worked there. Yeah. We can switch. Overlooking the valley. What a beautiful place to rest in peace for eternity. These are the words of one of the man that I encountered while doing the research on the cemeteries. His name is Sonny McRae. Sonny McRae lives in the Arrington Valley. I do not recall which language he speak most. Was it English, French, or Gaelic? Because he had a thick accent. And he told me, I got a beautiful place up there. And suddenly I swear I'm gonna be buried. Now, I'll be buried there, and I will make sure that I will watch over the valley, and nobody will ever touch my valley. Yeah, and Sonny McRae is still standing. He's 90 years old today, and he's still working hard as a farmer, just like he was in his 20s. And he still has this idea that he's going to be looking over the valley. And what is really incredible about that place is there were 755 people living there in 1900. Today, 123 years later on, they are 746. Yeah, still mainly English speaking. So they are protecting that valley. It's something, you know, that those people, they work hard for that land, eh? Just like your family. They really work hard for that, to keep the land going and to live on that land. And it was not a land that they were not cropping for money, because the land is poor, right? it's rocks underneath, so they were living off the land and on the land. So it's they came here, their roots are here, and they probably, your ancestor probably left Ireland because of the famine. Because of the rarity of the land there, they could be not proprietor, but here they became owner of that land. They became yeomen or whatsoever, and it was their land, so they really got their root deep in their land. This is why some of the people decided to build their own cemetery on their own land. Because of that, they wanted to be part of that history forever. Yeah. Sometimes preserved, like the Granville Canal. We can think about here. It's really beautiful. Downtown Mille-Isles, it's beautiful. We passed through it really fast, so. But it's really a beautiful, it's really beautiful, what the community did before, and especially for those who are new around here. You look at this, wow, there were intentions, intentions of conservation, protecting the buildings, renovating the buildings, protecting the cemeteries, protecting these places of worship. Even though if we do not go to church anymore, we are protecting them. It's important. Even I've heard about that, the little school, right? They are renovating the little school. This is really great because it's part of your heritage, and we have to hold on to that heritage and protect it and take care of it. By taking care of it, we are showing the younger generation, this is how you have to do in the future. Because
That's the only
here's,
schoolhouse that's left.
eh?
That's the only schoolhouse that's left in the mill now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when they built the 329, they demolished the old Methodist church instead of moving it. They just move it.
They moved the cemetery.
They moved the cemetery, they moved the cemetery,
Right.
yeah. But moving cemeteries is a practice that's been for ages. In Lachute and St. Andrews, they moved the cemetery. At first, the Catholic cemetery was by the Saint Anastasia Church on Bethany. And when they built the big church in 1930, they asked the people to move their grandpas and grandmas to the other places. So we had to go and dig to get grandpa out and go into the other place.
Where is the rest of
But you know what happened? If you didn't do that, the corpse stayed there. So now underneath the parking of Saint Anastasia, there are many people still buried there with no markers, not even a mention of they are still here.
No plaque.
Yeah. This is how it works. If I do not tell, but this is one of my plans. I'm working, I know people at Saint Anastasia, and I want them to write a plaque telling that story. It's important to tell that story.
The whole lot of people these days just throw the X somewhere. There's no story.
That's right, they're not buried,
Yeah, we always think that, it's gonna survive after us, but no, if there's no law to protect it, probably people will do anything, right? It's the same thing when you sell your house or you sell your land, and you come back years after, and say, wow, they changed everything. Don't look back. Well preserved, okay?
Oh.
I especially chose that picture because it's really beautiful around here. Yeah, that's your place.
Great job in the back.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
knows that. Everybody printed that last year. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Somebody went up in the sky.
Somebody keeps it nice.
What was that? That was fun though, that was great.
And that is one thing that that's in all the speeches that I do and the presentation that I do, it always proposed lie on the shoulder of that many people, and most of the community, we could say 1 or 2 hands of people, but when you will not be there, you know, when you go, when you die, what will happen? We have to interest the younger generation into the conservation of our heritage. Even the new arriving people, we have to do that. We have to bring them in our heritage.
We're trying.
Yeah. It's really important to do that. Otherwise, we are not sure that the people after us will take care of that heritage. Right?
We're looking for someone to cut the grass.
Yeah, just start looking for young kids.
You're part of the younger generation.
I'm looking for young kids. Right on ground.
Sometimes it will be hidden, okay, just like the Carillon monument. Have you ever been there? Just by the Carillon Dam? Never been there? Yes, yeah. It's the celebration of a battle, but more than that, it's a public art. It's something really unique in Quebec and unique in the whole wide world. A place like that where I normally call that a necropole. Necropole, which means it's a place where we worship our dead people, dead. Yeah, that's it. And I was talking with an historian who did lots of research on the Law des Ormeaux and everything, and he came and we had a nice little visit of that place. And he said, he said to me, you do not know the richness of that place, what it does represent to the settlement of the European era. Because at one time, there was a battle. Even if the numbers are not told, because there were 800 Iroquois there against 17 French. That's a lot of people, right? But that battle here settled something on that land, in the history of that land. And that little place celebrates the story of those who were there at that time and those who died. Even the First Nation and the French who died there. So many died there. And we have to remember that it's a thing place of reflection that as the unknown soldier statue in Le Chute, you see. So once a year we should do pilgrimage of these places and remember those who fought for liberty, fought for an idea, fought for, and those who were living here before, just like cemeteries. Cemeteries are the reflection of the past. You go there, you look at the past, you look at history, the story of so many people. I remember I was in, I think it's in, was it here or Shrewsbury? There was a family, Tumulty. The wife died and the 6 children died of dysentery in 1883. So a whole family died because of the epidemic of dysentery in 1883. I can imagine Mr. Tumulty, who survived his wife, living alone with his older son and cropping and living there. Probably got married again, I do not know. But by looking at that, kind of, makes me think, well, they encountered hardship during their life, right? Really, really hardship. So that's in Grenville. Yeah, St. Matthew's Cemetery in Grenville, just by the Ottawa River, celebrates the memory of Thomas Keynes. Thomas Keynes was a soldier and he was the owner of a sawmill and a grist mill in Grenville. But that guy, he fought with George Washington in the Battle of Washington. He took part of the burning of the White House.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's the guy from Grenville.
Okay, January 6th.
There is even a story about this family. When they burned the White House, they, inside the White House, they were ready for a banquet that afternoon. And all the soldiers got into the White House and they stole pieces of the White House, you know, utensil, forks, knives and stuff like that, the clock. So one of the, third generation of Thomas Jefferson, in 1936, he decided to call Roosevelt himself in person. And he said, I have something that my great grandfather took from the White House, or from the burning of the White House, and I feel the need that I should give it back to the United States. So he went to Washington and he got a reception by Roosevelt himself in person, and they were sitting there and he gave back what his great grandfather stole from the White House at that time. It's quite a story, eh? So in Grenville, they decided to build a mausoleum just like that for him. It's reminded. Yeah, another time demolished. It's a sad story. You could do a flick on. Yeah. That's in 1960.
Where was this?
That was close by the Ottawa River. That's the West Gore Cemetery in West Gore. Only a couple of people know where it is. Yeah. So it's all tombstones. Yeah. That's in Junani Road, a family cemetery. Oh, buildings. Remember that? That's so much too. Yeah, Armor Supply Company. Yeah, owned by Colin McEwen. Demolished a couple of years ago. Yeah. Shrewsbury. It's an, oh, we can go back to this one. That's probably around 1880, 1885, that picture was took. There is no trees, just field. I told you, there was no trees. They were cropping the land. It's incredible. And the cemetery is so little in the back there, right? And right on this side, there was the Orange Hall, right? And those Irish from Oranges, they were Protestant, huh? When they came to Lachute, they were parroting. There was always fights against the Scotch, fights against the Catholic, fights against the French, right?
There was an Orange Hall here.
There was an Orange Hall here, right, too, yeah. I remember going to that church. It was still there when we did the story of the cemetery. And I remember that morning when I got a call and they say that the church burned. Yeah, I was so sad. It was beautiful, and the community took care of it. Eh? Yeah, they were restoring it. Yeah.
Well, we had a minister that was here did the 4 churches or 5 churches. And he and I think Jimmy Kyle,
John Johnson.
and John Johnson was the minister, and him and Jimmy Kyle from Gore Lakefield redid all the pews in the church before it burned.
Oh.
We had a special service
Oh.
in the church when it was all done and completed, and the beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah.
And of course, somebody stole the bell with it.
Oh, yes, of course,
Yeah,
that was stolen. Great memories, though. Oh, my goodness.
That's the grist mill in St. Andrews, built in 1829. It's probably one of the oldest buildings that we still have on
What is it?
St. Andrews, just by the North River. And some people would say it's the old paper mill, but it's not a paper mill. It was a grist mill. Yeah. Where's St. Mungo's, 1836, just by the Ottawa River, that's the Scots, Church of Scotland, is that right? Yeah, it's a Church of Scotland. It is still open, yeah, I went there to do open circles with the people, with Melanie Wilson in Four Corners, yeah. That's the grist mill in St. Andrews. Where's that? Probably the oldest tombstones in Argentine. Would be La Chute Protestant. Yeah, La Chute Protestant. And it's probably this one here, Elizabeth Baker, the wife of John Sullivan Hutchins, one of the first Americans to drop by La Chute in 1796.
Wow.
He lived on the other side of the North River, and his wife died in 1800, about 4 years after they arrived there. And he had to put her in a casket of a tree and protect her with big rocks because they couldn't bury her underneath the ground. They died in winter. She died in winter time. Otherwise, the wolves would have probably eaten her. So they protected her, and in springtime, they dig the ground and they bury her. And this was the first burying on that land. It was the first burying on the. So it's the oldest cemetery after the indigenous one in St. Andrews. Mary Eastlake Bell, she's a painter, and she painted that the old grist mill in St. Andrews. Looks like where? Well, it's close by here.
Or is it Lake Louisa?
Yeah, it's Lake Louisa. Yeah, it's Louisa, just by St. Aidan's. Oh. That's the foundation of the old Presbyterian church on Scott Road. What's left of it. The church moved to Stonefield, and then whoop, before the flooding, they took the church and they brought the church to Val-Carol.
Oh.
Yeah, Stonefield, Kilmar, and Val-Carol. Yeah. Now it's the little chapel on Val-Carol in Arlington.
No kidding.
Yeah, that little chapel, yeah.
So where is that?
Scott Road.
Yeah.
Oh, we're about 5 kilometers from the 50. Past McGillivray Lake.
Just off the 50.
Just on the 50, yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, it's you could go from the 50 by Scotch Road up to Arlington Valley Road, but you need a 4x4 because you have to cross a river.
Oh.
Yeah.
You're okay.
That's another painting from Elizabeth Wales from the grist mill of St. Andrews. Oh, where's that?
Oh,
That's a crypt, yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, it's at St. Andrews.
Really?
Yeah. It's the old Protestant cemetery in St. Andrews. Yeah. That was built in 1867. It's still standing. That's Sir John Johnson. Oh, what's that building there? It could be here, right? It could be just a pull-up house there. Probably the same building, about the same time. That's still in St. Andrews. It's that right in front of the bridge. There's a big house there. It's there. Yeah. You can turn it. It was the La Douceur General Store. Some people say that it was the old paper mill, but the old paper mill said, St. Andrews was the place of colonization here, and they had the first paper mill in Canada built in 1803. Americans built that mill, and people would say a lot of time that it was that building, but the building burned in 1834, so it's kind of a urban legend that used to go in St. Andrews. That's the building now. They really did a perfect renovation. It's awful sometimes what they did, eh?
That's on the corner?
Yeah, that's in the corner, yeah, that's on the corner.
The gas station.
Yeah, and the gas station is right in front, yeah. St. Andrews in 1844. So that was the village. Imagine. Okay. Are old houses important to our local heritage? Should we preserve all of them? A question that we always ask ourselves. Are they just a pile of brick or old rocks? Are they part of our cultural heritage? Every time that we ask ourselves, is it important to be preserved? Yes, it is. Everything. Can we preserve everything? No, we have to choose, right? Community should make the choice, yeah, not individuals, right?
No.
Yeah, because we have the power, between the community, we could arrive to a certain agreement, right? And individuals, they will think about one thing. Yeah, their own belly bottom, or their money, or their own pocket, yeah. So at one time, this wall was up. That wall was part of a grist mill. The first grist mill ever built in Argenteuil in 1783. Okay? In 1840, the people of St. Andrews decided to keep the wall as a sign of that time, that old time. But in 1900, the people of St. Andrews decided to destroy the wall because it was dangerous. Kids was playing around and so,
Started a long time ago then.
yeah. So it's been destroyed a long time ago. So questions are asked, the time moves on, the questions are different, the results are different.
Now, is there something in St. Raphael that has, I don't remember, it was an old building, but it was like a shell of a building.
Mhm.
And St. Raphael?
Ontario,
Oh, I thought you were.
yeah.
Oh.
That's Ontario, yeah.
Oh, okay, okay.
So we can go on. So how about the cemeteries? Are we forgetting the ancestor? Does our history lies in the cemeteries? So for certain communities, their history lies really in the cemeteries because the people who knew that history are not there anymore. I'm almost finished and we're gonna go to the end of the question.
Sorry.
I think.
There comes a time when.
Oh.
Thank you.
So as a historian, I'm always asking myself, where do that history lies? Is it in the memories? Is it in the land? Is it in the places that the people who live, built, preserved? Probably all these answers. The memories are important. Your memories of what it was before are as important as what I'm telling now, what I'm saying now. They are as important as that building, that church, that tombstone, that road, that landscape. And we have to cherish that, and we have to share that memories. It's so important. This is the main topic of the open circle. And what I wanted to do today is I wanted to talk to you, make you think about the open circle that you could do without an historian, but you can, chronicle that, write down those memories, talk about it, interest the younger people into those memory circles. It's all right to know people of the same generation meeting all together and talk about the old times, but we need to interest the youngest one to that story, so that they could tell, that they would tell that story later on, when they will be older. And when they will understand the privilege that they have to listen to that story. I know people who do not know their family history. This is quite, sad. It's sad for me. Before my mom died, I took lots of mourning, preparing oatmeal to her, and she had cancer, and I was there just for one purpose. I made her talk. Because she was the guardian of that, of our family history, and I really needed to hear that story, to understand where do I come from. Who were they? Who was my father? Who was my grandfather? Who was my grandfather? Her father or grandfather? Where did we came from? It was incredible times. And she said to me, I only look at the photos and I do remember it all. Wow, it's incredible. And she knew everything, and she transmitted that to me. It's a big power, because I have to do that with my kids and my brothers and sisters, and I do not remember everything. I have everything, but I do remember. So we are carrier of that story, and we have to transmit it and share it to the other ones. That's how to say the mission.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Oh, we could pass that, but it's been long. What time is it now?
3.
It's 3 o'clock already. Okay, a couple more slides, and remember, we're gonna go to okay, after that, yeah. Other, we go history, and it's Maryland from the memories, yeah, and souvenirs. You share, because I have a couple of slides on the middle that I wanna end up with, yeah.
Continue.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, that's.
That one, yeah, that's Philip, yeah, that's Philip, yeah.
Is that?
No, that was the church before.
Yeah, that was the,
Yeah.
yeah, the shed, yeah, and that was the shed, yeah.
Gordy's father was, had his funeral there just before, 2 years before, or 2 years after it was, taken down, right? So that was what, 1956? No, 54, his father died.
56.
56, yeah, it was taken down and the new one was built.
And you look at the model of the church, it's the same.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
in Shrewsbury.
I mean, it would have been so nice to see
Oh,
that like
yeah.
that.
But you probably have pictures of that, no? Do you
Yeah,
have?
We have some, yeah.
Yeah, you have some, right? Yeah,
But I think-
yeah.
But I think the Holland thing, but.
Oh, yeah, sure. All would be hear that.
No, well, like I'm a hard,
Yeah. Upgrade, upgrade.
combination. Yeah. So the next item. That's it now.
So that, when we did the survey on the cemeteries, we did that from 2012 to 2015. It took almost 3 years to collect all the information and everything, but that was a Polaroid in time. That was important to do, just like the people before us did. There were people who came here in 1980s, in the 1980s, probably Bob Alderson, and they did a Polaroid in time of the tombstones, and they took notes of what was written on the tombstones, because with time, sometimes the information vanished, right? So at least now we have 2 Polaroids. Yeah. Yeah, this is a problem. Something like that. So it's memories. And I will end up on that, because otherwise. Do you have any questions? Souvenirs, things that you want to add?
Gordon?
No.
Yeah, very nice job.
Yeah, I wish I had time before this presentation to dig into the middle history, but I didn't have the time to do that. It was kind of really occupied these days. And, with the hockey seasons that started in September, I thought I would have a couple of hours with the weekends, but my kids are playing all around, so it almost not. I have 4 boys playing hockey, you see? Yeah, I'm lucky.
Practice, or you're going to practice,
Is there anybody that's going to continue with this work on the cemeteries? I know you didn't cover them all, I remember you.
Yeah. Our project is to do a second phase, and, we talked about this in the summer, with Jean-Pierre Grenier, about doing a second phase, or a second, yeah. Because we stopped at 57 cemeteries, and we know that there are more, at least 75, probably 87. So there's still at least 32 places that we didn't visit.
No.
That's a lot. The agenda is big, eh? From north to south, to east to west. So, yeah. So hopefully we're
They
gonna.
would probably be some of the oldest ones too, because,
Yeah.
you know, they were harder to, determine who was there.
Yeah, absolutely,
It
absolutely.
was easier with these.
Yeah,
modern.
yeah, it was those who we knew about, they were 37 at the time, and we ended up looking at 57, so
Wow.
we kind of grew to 20 cemeteries or family cemeteries, so yeah.
Do you remember we asked you about insuring cemetery? Insuring cemetery? You remember that?
Yeah.
Nothing ever came out of it.
No, I do not have any answers for that. Insuring, so with insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
You know, because right now we're hit with a hell of a bill
okay,
to insure. So we don't get sued, somebody could get hurt in the cemetery,
oh, okay,
and it's costing a lot of money. And I was wondering if we could get some kind of insurance that cover all the cemeteries in our county.
that's a good question that we could ask Geneviève Grenier, maybe she could look up, look at this thing. You know, she's the agent culturelle at the MRC, she'd probably be the best person we could ask, Geneviève Grenier. Yeah, she's the cultural agent at the MRC. She'd probably be the really the best person, you know, that we could ask. And that's a great idea, you know?
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, it would cover, you know. Cut down the cost.
most of the time I do visits in cemeteries, I warn people to watch where they put their foot, because sometimes there are, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's because
It costs tax and the casket goes down.
Just a couple of weeks ago, we stopped by, and there was somebody sitting and leaning on stones.
Yeah.
It's my family, that doesn't matter, you can still fall over and you can, you know, so it's important to have something like this. Yeah, some kind of insurance,
Yeah.
you don't wanna end up being sued.
Well, under that, nobody's gonna be responsible for it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other side of the coin.
Mhm.
And you have what you have shown here on the screen, some of the cemeteries they're no longer there.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. But I think that, I figure that with the work that we did, it kind of, help people understand that they are not alone anymore. And most of the problem of those who disappeared is because there was a last one.
Well,
There was a last person who
Yeah, but-
took care of the place, and that person is gone. So 25 years later on, cemetery looks like
That's a
this.
good question about the Shrewsbury Cemetery, but there's no church there anymore, and nobody Is there somebody, is there a committee or something that's looking?
Yeah, I think that the committee from the municipality board with the community at the Lakefield church, they are taking care of the cemetery. Reese Johnson is there. Yeah, and Reese could be really helpful for you, Neil.
Yeah.
You live close by.
Yeah, I don't even know where they got it.
Yeah.
I don't think.
No, I don't think they have any insurance, but, you know, you could do like, corvée, there, and they could come and help and do a corvée here to protect, and.
Yeah, but who does those coffees? Because we're trying to gather some people, and it's all nice to have all of this documentation. We have documentation about what's happening with planet Earth, but we're still at the same stage. So I think it's all nice and dandy, documentation and communication, but sometimes I think we need to push the button somewhere.
Yeah.
So it's, whose buttons do you need to push?
That's true, yeah.
It's community work, so you have 4 boys.
Yeah.
And there's a great place. So we got a lot of lawn to mow, we have painting to do.
Beer out by home.
But that's but so just a comment, I'm not an original Mille-Isles, but my father was here since 42, my grandfather. But the thing is Mille-Isles is here because of community work.
Yeah.
Mille-Isles survived because of that. That's something people have to remember. It's community work, everybody helping each other out, bringing in the kids to help out and visit something, you know. Stir them up a bit and intrigue them and things like that. So if you.
You could do special activities with an hour of corvée, with the special activities, you know, cultural activity around in the surrounding area. During that day of cultural activity, you could do, let's do a little corvée and paint, you know. There are ways, you have to be imaginative, I know, just to be imaginative. Yeah.
Well, yeah, food attracts people.
Yeah. That attracts journalists.
That's what we did last year, we meet, our community in the church, got everybody together. I mean, I'm sorry, and the youngest ones that were up on the scaffolding were how old? These gentlemen were up on the scaffolding. It's crazy, but everybody came up, and what we did was made hot dogs and hamburgers and chili and.
But it's really beautiful, you know, to see that sense of community that you have here. It's an example for all the other community. Because I know that some of them are they are not together. I feel the sense of togetherness here. I really feel it. And every time that we talk together, Mr. Patrick, I always sense that too. So, and with Gordon, same thing, yeah. So you are lucky. You're the lucky ones, and you could be an example for all the others. So maybe we could.
So you're 4 sons, eh?
Yeah.
It's not coffee, it's fine.
Thank you very much. I didn't move up here. Do you have any questions from the internet?
No, I just had one comment. When speaking about cemeteries and who cares for them, as people move away, that is where the loss of contact starts, unfortunately. I am 5th generation of my family, along with my 2 brothers, and we will be the first not to be buried in Lachute, as we have all moved away.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and
Do they have boys?
this is why it's so important to interest the newcomers in those community works that we have to do. And I know that in Mille-Isles, you have lots of newcomers, so you have to grab them by the hand and show them Well, this is the history of here.
But it's very strange, we've even had support from right across Canada.
Yeah, okay, from the people who,
Moved away,
yeah.
and they found out we were strapped for money,
Mhm.
we got some.
Oh, wow, great.
Yeah, well, sure.
That's another great example of things that you can do. You can solicitate the families.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
Well, you don't think they care,
Oh, they
yeah.
do, they do. Because at one time they will do the road back to the first place that they arrive. They will do it. Somebody in the family will do it.
Yeah.
And they will do the genealogy of the family, and they would want to know where their ancestors are buried.
Yeah.
And they will do the le chemin du pèlerin. Their pilgrimage. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Some of us, I guess, have